Come on. And we are rolling on this wonderful day of March 15, the Ides of March, where it's a beautiful sunny day. And we're about to address the question, should we ban all fracking? Should we ban all fracking? Speaking on the affirmative, Nandit. On the negative, Diego. Could you come to the podium, please? Thank you. Good. You may begin, sir.
So this proposition will be presented in the affirmative. Fracking is an industrial activity, just like any other industrial activity, and like all sources of energy, it has environmental impacts. We must decide whether those environmental impacts are greater than other industrial activity, as the case with planners and industry. The main definition you guys need to know is hydraulic fracking. Fracking is a technique designed to recover gas and oil from shale rock. Fracking is the process of drilling down deep into the earth before high-pressure water is mixed. High-pressure water mixture is directed at the rock to release the gas inside. Water, sand, and chemicals are injected into the rock, which allows the gas to flow out to the head of the well and be collected. So what is the problem? Fracking in the United States, where it has revolutionized the energy industry, has prompted environmental concerns. Concerns include contamination of water sources, seismic activity caused by the fracking itself, and fears that the gas from the fracking threatens to hinder the development of emission-free renewable energy sources. According to Mike Bradshaw of the Global Energy at Warwick Business School, and he's also a researcher at the UK Energy Centre, he's not saying that there are not risks, there are risks, and they're clearly understood and identified. So what exactly are these risks? The problems that currently need attention with the risks are the damage to the environment that's caused and how that outweighs the economic benefits to fracking. In our current water crisis, can we be okay with 1.5 million gallons of water being used per well on average? In the U.S., up to 30,000 new wells were drilled and fracked between 2011 and 2014, so you can do the math on that. A recent study by the National and Oceanic Atmospheric Administration monitored gas wells in Weld County, Colorado, and estimated that 4% of the methane produced by these wells was escaping into the atmosphere. The NOAA scientists found that Weld County gas wells tended to emit the equivalent carbon emissions of 1 to 3 million cars. The Associated Press reported that in Wyoming's air quality near rural drilling sites, their air quality is worse than Los Angeles. Wyoming's ozone levels recorded at 124 parts per billion, which is parts per billion over the maximum health limit, which is 75 parts per billion, and currently in the Los Angeles area, we reside around 114 parts per billion. In 2007, a report prepared for the Western Governors Association presented that the future nitrogen oxide and sulfur dioxide emissions from oil and gas drillings in these projects in Montana led to a 310% increase in nitrogen oxide pollution. The EPA stated through its United States Geological Survey that it confirmed that the residents of Pavilion, Wyoming had their water sources contaminated by hydrofracking that occurred there. The AP recently reported that the amount of chemically tainted soil from drilling waste increased nearly 5,100% over the past decade to 512,000 tons last year. And now on the human aspect of that, all of those things will essentially lead to aspects in your health. So according to an article in the scientific journal called the Human and Ecological Risk Assessment, they compiled a list of 632 chemicals, and there's more, but they were incomplete due to trade secrecy exemptions, that were identified in drilling operations in the U.S. And they found that 75% of these chemicals could affect the skins, eyes, and other sensory organs, such as the gastrointestinal system. 40 to 50% of these chemicals could affect the brain and nervous system. Your cardiovascular and immune system were affected by an average of 37% of the chemicals, and 25% of the chemicals in there could cause cancer mutations. In the contrary, you'll find areas such as the United Kingdom where once they have found the health risks posed by fracking, they have halted all of their major fracking. So currently, the only attempted date is near Blackpool in England, and it was done in 2010 but was halted halfway due to minor earthquakes in the area. So why do we have the problem? Essentially, our dependence on fossil fuel and lack of enough of initiatives spurred by regulation to increase investment in renewable energy sources. Because many state agencies function as facilitators of fossil energy development rather than regulators, federal guardians of the public health, these federal guardians are vulnerable to getting in bed with big business, literally. So one prime example is the former federal agency in charge of collecting oil and gas royalties on public lands, and that was the Minerals Management Service. The employees from the Bush administration working for that regulatory service were caught using cocaine, marijuana, and having sexual relations with oil and gas company representatives. So even if we choose to regulate, odds are our interests are not going to be preserved because our government is in bed, literally, with the oil and gas companies. So
cocaine and all.
Cocaine and all. So what is the solution? We need a 21st century energy revolution that's based on efficiency and renewables, not fossil fuels that would add to climate change. This is kind of highlighted by the climate change deal we saw in Paris. Kind of highlights that most governments are recognizing this as change needs to be occurring. And so I'm proposing a ban on fracking. And we can see throughout the world that this is a possible and a solution that can occur without negative economic effects. So currently in the UK, the ministers over there pledged an outright ban on all fracking in national parks. France and Germany have completely banned fracking. And additionally, in the United States, the New York State banned it as well, citing public health risks. So will this solution work? Obviously so, because it will completely ban fracking, thus these public health risks will not be risked at being placed into the access of our citizens. And then additionally, since the government is being spurred through environmental procedures and a lot of public demand to increase its regulation and insight into that, they will put more processes in place to reduce fracking. What are the advantages of this? Long story short, cleaner environments, better justice system in a sense when you prevent the governmental agencies from having the opportunity from working hand in hand with these big businesses. And additionally, it'll relieve an unfair burden on families and children. As you know, many children are going to be dealing with the health risks affiliated. Now, the opposition may choose to highlight the economic loss as fracking has brought in hundreds of thousands of jobs, if not millions, in the United States. But eliminating fracking would not eliminate all those jobs, because the investment in fracking would then be geared into other renewable energy sources. As at the end of the day, we still have a fundamental amount of energy to produce, and if that need is not met, innovations and future inventions will lead the way into providing those needs.
Thank you. I now stand open for cross-examination and points of clarification, sir. Yes. Could you stand close together and pretend to like each other? Yes, thank you. Okay, you're taller, so I have to adjust the camera. That's good. And you look at me and face me in the audience. It's us you're trying to persuade, not each other. Begin.
So I wanted to bring up one of the points that you made about the chemical contents in fracking solutions. So you said that up to 75% can affect eyes, skin, and organs, correct?
Yeah.
Right.
Or I said, yeah, skin, eyes, and other sensory organs.
Right. But one of the fundamental things that to realize is that the percentage relevant to the amount of water that's actually going to be used towards fracking these wells is less than 1%. It's around 0.05%. And you could also argue the case that, most saturated fats and cheese also lead to heart disease and kill millions of Americans. So where's the regulation on, chemicals being added into the agriculture industry? which in turn also leads to much higher contribution to methane than fracking would ever would.
So
let him answer that long question.
I'm not a scientist, and I can't per se define 0.05 parts per million in the water content. But at the end of the day, some of these chemicals are so dangerous that even to levels of 0.01 or 0.02, they will be dangerous to the humans drinking them. So at that point, it's still a danger to the humans involved, and a government's first and foremost duty is to protect its citizens. So to protect the interests of a big business trying to make profit over the health of the citizens doesn't seem to be the best.
Two left.
Best.
Sure. So would you say that the case that happened in Wyoming is a case that happens frequently? Is it a frequent type of event that occurs with fracking in the industry?
Not at all. It's an event that occurs all the time. Regulatory procedures currently stand. When leaks occur, when water sources are contaminated, they are required to be reported. Unfortunately, I do not have the statistics here, but countless time after time, they have been avoided being reported. Even just looking at the BP oil spill,
Okay.
just the
Yeah.
time
Yeah.
taken
Right.
to,
Right. I understand. But what
so
I'm
the
trying to
environmental
emphasize,
damage will
right,
occur.
right. So what I'm trying to emphasize to you is that fracking occurs, every single day, and the process of it is actually
One left.
very unlikely to even happen, and the result is usually a poor infrastructure, which in a highly regulated industry like energy is highly unlikely. And then my last
I would
question to you.
disagree because there's
Right.
various places
Right,
in the
right.
United States, Colorado, Wyoming, Texas,
Sure.
Down to the point of a first world nation. You have the New York State actually banning fracking, pointing out that where the infrastructure actually does lie, that doesn't prevent the harm to the population and regulations.
30 seconds.
Last question. So you said that there's corruption in the government, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so if you said these people are cutting lines of coke with their friends in the oil and gas industry, how likely is a ban possibly to get put through them?
At the end of the day, those were specifically individuals that were hired part of the mineral something service. I do not recall correctly. Normally, it's senators.
So it's not an
presidents,
unlikely event. It's not a tail event. It's
It's
something
a
that doesn't happen.
possibility. It's a possibility, but when there's a ban implemented, that event is removed because
Right.
there's
Bans
an
work
industry.
very well. Thank you.
That's time. And the chair will now recognize the leader of the opposition to refute the idea that we should ban all fracking for a speech not to exceed 7 minutes in length.
All right, so I'm here to talk about the proposal of banning all fracking. I'm going to be arguing in the negative. Quick definition would be to just quickly assign what a tight oil play is. So that means extracting oil from non-porous rock. That's the only thing I'd like to add to the definitions. So what is the problem? I would argue right now that the problem is that the world is becoming more industrialized as we speak, and traditional sources of energies are simply being exhausted. In most emerging markets, significant shifts in the population from rural to urban necessitates that there needs to be an increase in infrastructure and a provision that would include more transportation, more communication, more telecommunication, energy, water supplies, sanitation, drainage systems, all which require the use of heavy industry and energy. So it's evident that rapid economies are rising all around us, China and India. And Professor Yang Huang from the University of Cambridge Developmental Economics talks about the link between increases per capita income and changes in lifestyles. So more demand for cars, refrigerators, other heating, cooling, and lighting appliances, all which require more energy, will be undoubtedly required. These are all things that need to be assembled through the massive collective effort of the energy industry. So current energy supplies are simply not prepared to meet these new sources of energy, and we need more economically viable technologies. The IEA, or the International Energy Agency, in 2015 gave out their world outlook saying that projections of current fossil fuel supplies that normally met 45% of the world energy demand will simply only meet around 10% by the year 2040. That is a staggering amount of difference in the amount of energy demanded throughout the world. So the real problem is that banning fracking would be detrimental to economies around the world because of the fact that the United States has quickly entered into the energy market to, provide resources to millions of its citizens. The Chinese are another big economy that have looked into fracking technologies, and they currently practice themselves. But let me give you some positive impacts on the growing energy sector through fracking. So a PhD professor of geoscience from Pennsylvania gave a TED Talk at Pennsylvania State University, and he added that there was an estimated 25 times as much natural gas than previously thought, when he investigated a well-known shale area known as the Marcellus. So that's in the upper Midwest region. And the fact of the matter is that, before there was only thought to have been maybe a small amount of natural gas available, and it wasn't a viable source. After his discovery, there's a huge pour of capital and infrastructure into these new energy sectors. So the positive impacts that fracking does provide is it provides a diversified energy resource. Professor Terry Engelder touched upon the topic of utilizing technologies like fracking to power natural gas wind turbines that will offer a great solution to the current energy crisis we're having and move towards a more sustainable, cleaner energy possibility. The fact of the matter also as well is that solar and complete wind operating turbines by themselves are not functional and are not prepared to meet the demands of emerging economies around the world. In the US, maybe there's a case where we can experiment in isolated areas, but you can't take on the risk of having a power grid wipe out your entire energy. So there obviously is still a need for fossil fuels. If we move towards natural gas, we'll be moving towards a cleaner system, which there are many advantages of using natural gas. So how big is the problem? Well, fracking is being considered banned around the world. So what I'm going to focus on is how, particularly in the U.S. energy market, there's most relevant towards us. So if we were to ban fracking, it would be detrimental to local economies. The economic impact of fracking, given by a senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute, estimated that there were nearly 10 million Americans that are employed directly and indirectly from the broad ranges of business associated with hydrocarbons. So this is the idea of the trickle effect, where if these infrastructures are built, there will be more demand for steel mills, for underground pipes, manufacturing for new rail cars, constructing 80 major pipeline projects are currently in counting right now, not including the Keystone XL pipeline from Canada, which is still up for debate in Congress. And the fact of the matter is that if you ban fracking, you will kill a revitalization to the blue-collar workforce. Currently, entry-level jobs in the fracking industry pays around $7,000 a year. A well specialist with a couple of years' experience could be looking at a $100,000 salary, and the highest-paid job, which would be a directional driller, without a BA, can earn close to $200,000 a year. It is a much-needed revitalization to a stable and robust energy and job cycle that will help out the United States, especially as it has the problems dealing with before. So when we have problems, there's inaccurate information regarding fracking practices. So under much scrutiny, a few companies, followed by Schlumberg and Range Resources, recently discussed what was exactly in the fracking fluid. Much of it, to people's surprise, was chemical ingredients that are similar to instant coffee, walnut shells, and some known suspects of carcinogens, which include benzene and methanol. But to keep in mind, there are about 5,000 gallons of additives for every 1 million gallons of water. That represents about 0.05% of the total fluid. Fracking is dangerous because of the toxic chemicals involved. I would have to disagree. At these levels, they are not remotely dangerous. And another point to make is that the charge about fracking contaminating water came from a leak that happened that was investigated by Duke University professors, and they never bothered to examine whether there was actual methane concentrations in the water before. So that was one point that many people claim to be the reason why fracking is bad. So what is the solution? Allow fracking to continue. One of the main benefits is that it'll help us tackle global warming in the sense that we can reduce the amount of greenhouse energy gases that would be there. The other solution would be to have tighter regulation on fracking practices that would reduce negative externalities. While fracking is a disruptive technology, it comes and needs to be dealt with properly, ensuring that stronger regulation keeps proper infrastructure to make sure that the water used in fracking does not ever come into contact with any possible drinking sources of water, which it currently does not. There have been cases where poor infrastructure has led to those, but those are minute tail events. They are not a likely outcome in the industry. So, on balance, I would say that banning fracking would just not be a great idea, and it would reduce gains in unemployment. It would reduce employment, and would promote national security threats with our dependence on foreign oil, and it's a great, robust industry that's growing.
Thank you. 7:02. I now stand open for cross-examination and points of clarification.
So
Thank
you
you for
stated
waiting
that,
respectfully at the door.
Specifically, at a Duke University professor in some study that was conducted stated that in that study that when they tested the later methane levels, they never had actually tested the prior methane levels.
Look
Yes.
at the audience, not your opponent.
Yes.
But
This was the viral video where people were saying the water is on fire, and they were literally taking lighters to the water and showing, look what fracking has done. But there was no investigation into the methane presence before.
So I just wanted to point out that just because they didn't test the levels prior to doesn't mean that the methane levels haven't increased. If the methane was literally, in the new incidents when water was literally became flammable, and if prior to water was not flammable, whatever
Right,
level
but
the increase was,
there
it might not
were
be.
no relevant studies about the methane levels regarding that area.
Two left.
Okay, specifically though, that doesn't prove that it didn't raise the the methane levels. Additionally though, you talked about the oil industry causing a lot of income and profits to be generated through other supporting industries. But banning fracking doesn't cause supporting industries to fail.
Really? What would happen?
So what would
Look at me.
So what would end up occurring is that then investment in R&D would be invested towards renewable energies, and those supporting industries would then pivot to maintain business with additional players in the game. So they would still garner business, but they would have to just pivot to focus on renewable partners.
Is that a question that you're asking?
Oh, I was
about,
just
or-
refuting
Okay.
one of your points. And then
But you have to ask questions.
Yeah,
I
that's
asked
a
a
good
few questions. Okay,
Yeah.
fair enough. And then you stated that innovative technologies to support fracking. You stated that fracking is an innovative technology.
Yes.
But
One left.
is it not based off of fossil fuels?
Look at me.
You're associating fossil fuels with not being innovative technologies. They were the reason why we have cars being powered by untypical forms of energy ever thought before. And now you have, wind turbines being powered by natural gas. So I would argue that yes, fracking is a disruptive and new technology that's now being utilized.
But it's not. So you'd argue that it's disruptive and not.
I said it's innovative, and yes, it is also a fossil fuel.
30 seconds.
Would you argue that it's more innovative than renewable sources such as solar energy?
I mean, I would argue that there's a lot of experiments going on with vegetable oil is considered a new method of fuel, but that is innovative. But I wouldn't say it's relevant and applicable. So I'm
I think it
questioning
would
the
be
relevance of
actually
those
quite
technologies.
applicable.
Look at me,
Ethanol
look at
is
me.
utilized
Yeah.
in gasoline burning car engines.
That's time.
That's a plant-based oil.
Thank you. It's now time for refutation, where you stand up and say, he said, I disagree because, therefore.
So, for the points of refutation, you had specifically stated in the Duke, let me get back to my points of refutation. I was in the wrong area. You had specifically stated that the environmental impact is minimal. I would like to refute that with a wide variety of statistics, specifically, highlighting through the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration study again in Weld County, Colorado, that the methane gas that escapes into the atmosphere is the equivalent of 1 to 3 million cars. That's just Weld County, Colorado. So I will highlight another area again, Wyoming. Wyoming's ozone levels are where fracking occurs at a high level. Their ozone levels are recorded to be, once again, 124 parts per billion, compared to the EPA's maximum healthy limit at 75 parts per billion. Additionally to that, when you go to the UK and you look at Blackpool, they linked earthquakes, various seismic tremors, to the fracking, and then the UK then made the decision to shut down that site and to prevent any future sites.
Look at me. Yeah.
At the end of the day, you could state that it is a minimal environmental impact, but it seems to be very wide-reaching and wide-ranging as it's affecting, the UK, which is across the ocean, and various states in the United States. And you also have the New York State banning fracking, which is ranging from east to west coast. So it's
So
not something
therefore
that's-
what?
So therefore, I would like to refute your claim that fracking has a minimal environmental impact,
And we should ban fracking.
and that we should ban fracking.
Thank you. Good, thank you. That was 146. Good. Okay, you have 3 minutes to
Right.
refute the claims,
Um,
plural,
First,
of
I would
your
like
opponent.
First, I'd like to address the claim made about seismic activity related around fracking industry. So there's one thing to be aware of, is that this doesn't occur in isolation in only the fracking industry. You could look at any major industrials industry, coal, mining, lumber, anything that has to involve with heavy use of machinery and extracting minerals out from the ground cause significant impact in seismic activities, and it's been recorded throughout history. So there's no reason to point the finger simply at fracking because it's a new technology that's disruptive. While many claim, and I have here, according to the Bloomberg News article, fracking does not cause significant earthquakes, saying that hydraulic fracturing used to access oil from gas supply doesn't cause significant earthquakes. According to Durham University, the size of the number of earthquake faults caused by fracking is low compared to other man-made triggers such as mining, geothermal activity, and reservoir water storage. So that's just one claim. The second claim I'd like to bring up is that he mentioned that the ban in New York City was something that happened. And I'd like to address how effective that ban was. So, according to a Huffington Post article on February 20th, 2015, New York threatened secession from Governor Cuomo's ban on fracking. In the southern tier of New York, Jim Finch said, there are no jobs. The economy is terrible. There is nothing going on. These people were literally at the point of trying to leave the entire state of New York and secede into a different part of the country, trying to just keep their jobs and the economies alive, where obviously there's no infrastructure there to help those communities. And one other point of refutation I would like to make, check how much time I have.
You have 1:45 you've used. So you've
Sure.
got
So,
120,
these
110
relevance, the relevance about, the relevance about permitting drilling in regions that would provide avenues for new jobs. So I would just like to say that he felt that the use of new energy, new renewable resources would actually be effective at meeting the global demands. And it's just not the case. It's too costly. Most emerging, I feel like it'd be very difficult to tell an emerging economy like India to try solar as opposed to using traditional means of coal and oil, which have been known for centuries to be reliable uses of energy. When they do become more industrialized, when they can become responsible for their carbon footprint, then measures can be taken. But until then, there's no way that banning the use of fracking, which allows a lot of energy to be extracted from the earth quickly and effectively, should be banned. It would be outright criminal to deny that right.
So for all these reasons?
So for all these reasons, I think we should not ban fracking.
Thank you. It's now time for the audience to do their job. Does anyone need a ballot? You need a ballot? I have ballot. Where are they? Ballots. Who needs a ballot? Any ballots here? You distribute them, please. Thank you. You need one?
Check down the table.
Who's Angela's partner? Jeffrey? Thank you. Okay, the time has come, the walrus said. Speak of other things.
Wait, what's that second time? I was wondering.
Someone didn't answer something.
Thank you, sir.
Sorry.
Okay. We have all the ballots.
Comes down with all kinds of
On a 3-6 decision, the ballot must go to the opposition. We should not ban fracking. Your decision and feedback, sir.
My name is Sam, and I voted for the government. I voted for the government for various reasons. One reason was the way he dealt with cross-examinations. Another is the way he presented his refutation. Additionally, I felt like Nandit was arguing for against the business consequences, whereas the opposition was trying to sort of talk about why helping, like bringing utilities and providing a strong workforce in some sense outweighs that, and I sort of like the government's position more.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
My name is Johnny.
Hi, Johnny.
Yeah, I will for opposition.
Yes, Johnny. Why?
Yeah, because both of them provide a lot of examples, and finally, I think Diego has strong argument because during the refutation, he provided a lot of example and data, and to support his opinion. So therefore, I think relatively opposition have done a little bit good job.
Okay. Thank you, Johnny. Yes, sir.
Jeffrey.
Hi, Jeffrey.
Hi. I voted for the opposition because during the cross-examination, he questioned something about science, and then he said, "I'm not a scientist," and then he still stated the information, but he never used the source or anything, so that gave me a reason not to believe whatever he was saying. So that's why I went with the opposition, because of the cross-examination.
Okay, so that was very telling to the credibility of the government side, huh? Yeah, great. That happens in cross-examination.
My name is Jorge.
Hi, Jorge.
I voted for the opposition because during his presentation, he delivered very well, in my opinion. Whereas Nandi, he, it's maybe stupid, but his hands were shaking quite a bit, which really distracted me from the message that he was giving.
Yeah.
Also, Diego managed to really illustrate the point that we really need to think about the economic consequences of eliminating fracking completely. And then also, as he stated before, Nadeed did give a lot of data, and just the fact that he said that he was not a scientist did not completely discredit him, in my opinion. But the fact that he did not explain how these numbers impact us, like the real issue, that's really why I had to give it to you.
Okay. Good reasoning. Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Raymond.
Hi, Raymond.
Great debate. I gave it to the negation. This debate came down to economic consequences over environmental consequences. So I think you both should have explained why one trumps over the other. But I gave it to the negation because you agreed that fracking was disruptive, but instead of banning fracking, you decided to put regulations on it, which was had better solvency than
Smart
just
thing to do.
completely
Yeah.
banning.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
I'm Josh.
Could you move over, please? No, move that way.
I move this way. Oh, all right. Well, I gave it to the opposition in the sense that. Oh no, I gave it to the affirmative. Sorry about that. Because yeah, I like the cross-examination. Well, there was a hiccup in the sense that he wasn't really asking anything at first, which should have been at the reputation. But I believe he had pretty good points. But I like how he he made the point where the industry wouldn't take too much of a blow in the sense that they would pivot to all these other alternatives. That was a pretty good point for me. That's what's
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, I'll comment on that and then I get to my critique. Yeah, yes, please.
Hi, my name is Jason.
Hi, Jason.
So I ultimately sided with the proposition for several reasons. I was actually really on the fence with this one. I thought you both had great arguments. Like in the end, ended up giving it to the proposition for a couple of reasons. One is that although Diego had a really good refutation, it was a lot better than Nandeet's in my opinion. I thought that Nandeet presented his argument, like he opened his argument in a way that kind of drew our attention compared to Diego, because I liked how, especially with Nandeet, you did bring up sources. That was good. You also implemented a lot of statistics that were very shocking to me. That the 75%, causing cancer chemicals. Like that kind of drew me inclined towards your case. So yeah, and also I did notice like this was more of an argument of environmental concern against economic policies, and in the end, like I considered the environmental concern arguments were superior to the opposition. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth.
Hi, Elizabeth.
I voted for the opposition, so I think Diego had two really good responses to the renewable energy argument that Nandeet presented. So first, Diego talked about how like solar and wind energy is not going to meet the demand that currently exists with energy. So again, that's like one refutation against that point. That
He evidenced.
Yeah, exactly.
He didn't
and
just
second
assert
of all,
it.
the job impact when Nandeet was basically saying, oh, we're just going to create new jobs by investing in these different forms of energy. Well, Diego was specifically talking about blue-collar jobs, right? Like, if you are going to renew and like technologically advance renewable energy, I think you're going to have more than a bachelor's degree in order to like get opportunities to work in these industries. And so I think that, and then Diego further re-emphasized this point by actually using Nandeet's example of New York State and turning it, basically saying like, okay, here is an example in which the ban happened, and it's illustrating the negative effects that I am talking about, so it really like impacts out the relevance of the point that he was making. I think that Diego also did a really good job with refutation by bringing in like specific sources. Like I think it was a Bloomberg article that basically talked about how you can't really point the finger of every single environmental harm and like seismic frequencies just to fracking, right? Like if you're trying to solve for environmental problems, like are you going to ban all industries that are polluting, right? Like the renewable energy is not going to be, banning fracking isn't going to be enough to like really solve for these environmental harms. And then he just did a good job like delinking causation and correlation. So I think overall refutation was stronger.
Exactly. Thank you. Yes, please.
Yeah, so I actually agree with Elizabeth on most parts of why you went with the impact. So I actually gave it to the negative. My only impact was I do think that what you did do well is I think that you kind of won on the point that you are going to get environmental impacts. And I think that you both agreed to that. And I think the only thing that was missing is like why I care. It's like what's going to be like the long-term outcome of having environmental impacts, right? So like yeah, we have like polluted stuff. You can agree like we're going to pollute like the cars. So like that was like when you like crushed them on like the whole like you say there's no impact. Like 3 million cars, like one fracking drill, all these things. Like, you crushed them on that. But it's like I just need to like. So what? What's the impact of that? Like, why does it matter that we're having this much pollution? Which, like, maybe we know intuitively, but I just need to, like, say explicitly. Like, you know, like, global warming, displacement, like, Pakistan's burning, like, there's a bunch of things, you know? It's like, I just needed some direct impact from there, whereas you, flowed out the actual impacts of everything with, like, the New York example. So if he got the impacts, I think he could have won it, because I do think you did make the link of the environmental harm and he agreed to it. But because I didn't get the direct impact, I gave it to the neg.
Yeah. Let me start on that point. I think that there was much, you got to the refutation of the meat of his case, which was this fracking is really harmful to the environment. It does bad stuff. It screws up our water. It shakes our earth. It's awful, it's awful, it's awful. And you took a while to get there for your refutation. Thank God you finally got there. Because we would have had a tough time deciding this debate when we have all this given environmental harms, and you saying, okay, well, jobs harms, and two ships in the night. Nandit, like to hear a few more of your sources' dates as you read them and document them as you're going through here. Some of the stuff like 211 to 214, you do the math. No, give us some numbers. Give us some numbers for some facts. Anyway, all your harms. I think you needed some refutation. There's better refutation than even the Bloomberg stuff on the earthquake. The new fracking procedures are completely different. The new fracking procedures aren't using the same water and the same,
exactly.
the same dirty water they used to, So, and the other thing that you strongly needed was solvency on your shift to, you make allusion to the Paris Climate Change Conference, which is frankly now, pretty much in the dustpan. You tell us that all these great places like France and Germany ban fracking, and then New York State, and then he rammed New York State down your throat would be the way I'd say it.
So actually,
there's answers to France and Germany about their nukes and stuff and so forth. What were you going to say?
So I just ended up losing it because for some reason when I printed it out, it ended up cutting my presentation onto my bibliography. But I was going to use Germany specifically in how they invested in clean energy, and so from 2002 to 2012, the clean energy use went up from 6% to 26%, and specifically in the industry, in the employment rates, they have all sorts of new skilled industry workers and people who have never had jobs, or people who are coming straight out of high school being trained to work in these skilled positions, but not with college degrees.
That would have been helpful evidence to hear. There's some other evidence about Germany, about the rates being very high in Germany now, and people going to bed very cold at night because they can't afford
and the relative the size compared to the United States, which is difficult to apply that model here.
Will the solution work? You didn't have any evidence there, any place where you just made barefaced assertions there, so that was problematic. And your bibliography didn't follow the APA style, but anyway, small detail. Diego, you got to the you went after, the whole idea that this creates jobs, and you really documented it well. And you documented that, frankly, fracking got us out of the recession and created saved Obama's butt, really, despite the fact that he didn't really want to do it. And this is where all the jobs have come from, and the splashover jobs, and you document that. Your stuff about the toxic chemicals was good. The other country I would use besides India is Africa. I mean, I happen to consider this just a racism of the worst kind to tell Africans they can't have electricity because these limousine liberals in Beverly Hills, want them to be solar and use wind. You can't get up to speed and build a country and run industries and run railroads and do things in the current state of solar. And there's got to be a transition fuel. And your smart idea is to say, let's make it safer, let's make it smarter. We've actually reduced our emissions. We've actually contributed a lot to reduce global warming by having gone to natural gas. The U.S. has actually led the way because we've used natural gas that we got through fracking. Whoops, one of those, inconvenient facts of Al Gore's, right? Yeah. Okay. I would have stressed more advantages. Your cross-ex was pretty good. So, good job. So has everyone turned in everything?
No.
Okay, turn it into Austin. You have the folder. Oh, you have to do that. Okay, yeah.
Professor, can I have something on?
Yeah.
I know, it's
You just saw it?
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Did you post that to the...
Oh, good, okay.
Rubio drop.
It's a big deal. I didn't leave some space. It's okay.
Yeah. Did something go or no?
Are you here next? Are you here next quarter, or are you done? You're here next quarter. Okay.
And I should be able to come to Tuesdays and Thursdays meeting.
Okay. All right, good.
Oh, Professor, do you know Shireen Lankarani?
Do I know?
She wanted me to say hi. Oh, you know her too?
We don't know her.
Oh, she wanted me to say hi, that's all.
Who's Shireen? Oh, Shireen from Kansas.
Yeah. She wanted me to say hi to you. Yeah.
Oh, good. Well, tell her I said hi.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, remind me about Shireen. I have to call her employer when we get back to the office. Well, thank you, everybody. Give yourself a round of applause. Good job. Yeah, have some more cake. Not much left. Has everyone turned everything in?
Yeah.
So who owes me the, you owe me the, self-evaluation plus you owe me, don't you owe me the, prison brief?
No, done?
No, he did it.
Yeah, I did.
Class.
Well, who is the other person that owed me a prison brief?
He left the class.
I already sent it to him.
Oh, him? Okay, you're good. When you were sending it to me, you're supposed to deliver it orally. So can you do it
I
orally?
can shoot you an email and find the time for me to do so.
You don't want to do it now, right?
No, I just don't have it.
Good.
I don't have a roll.
It's right there.
Oh, he's an Indian.
Oh, Professor, can we do the brief thing? Can you ask them for brief?
What?
It's not for these. We don't need it for these. We need it for the one.
Yeah, I can ask for all the briefs come back to me and send them by PDF. I can do that for all quarters. I used to do it, by the way, for NPDA.
Yeah, I think it'd be helpful.
Yeah, it's good.
As long as it's all, we'll probably need it. Oh, we don't need that, but BP, no one cares.
Yeah.
See you later, Professor. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll bump.
Have a
I'll
good
bump.
weekend.
Are you?
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Yeah.
Turn up
Bye.
tonight.
Bye.
Good job, dude. I was actually so hard. I couldn't find. I was like so close when I was researching this. Oh man, dude. Yeah, like, this is easy. Because like, dude, there's no reason to ban. Honestly, like, regulate. It's hard if you really need to. Great. Yeah, Professor ban. Professor, it's just stupid. Yeah, and you know what?
Cameras recorded. Volunteer.